Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session with Sam. Sam will brainstorm. Well, we were all work brainstorm together around governance, around AI, and this is a great opportunity to actually dive into this topic, right? So, Sam,
Yeah,
the floor is yours. Thank you for hosting the session.
great. So thanks for joining. And as Inesi said, this is really, I have a few ideas I'd like to use to help the conversation, to kind of stimulate the conversation. But I also really am interested in hearing everybody's thoughts, concerns, and ideas about artificial intelligence and governance. It's a pretty hot topic. There are some large grants out there for people in the space, and I'm building a software called Forby, Forby, like for the people, by the people, and it's a liquid democracy platform. And we're really looking at adding artificial intelligence as part of the service. And so I'll kind of share some of the ideas I have about that, but also, yeah, some of my concerns as well. And yeah, just looking forward to everybody's input. So let me just, I guess I'll share my screen. And let's see here. I have a little bit of a slideshow. And so I'll share it here. And okay. So, okay. So can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So 4b.org is the software we're building. And so we're really asking this question as we're building this: can AI support governance? And this is a brainstorming session, so I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be taking notes as well. So the basic backdrop to all of these questions are the fact that we're facing what many people call a meta crisis. So all of these problems that we have created over the last few hundred years are kind of all coming up at once. Everything from, pollution and mass extinction and wealth concentration, war, ocean acidification, fertility loss in the soil, and climate change. All of these things are really coming up and pushing us, forcing us to change the way we coordinate. So you can think of all these things: inequality, epidemics. You can think of these as coordination failures. I feel like we have the resources and we have the know-how to solve these problems, if we can just figure out how to get that know-how from the people who have it into power, into the ability to actually execute, to make things happen. And so the coordination failure has to do with the inability to pull good ideas from wherever they may be and put them into develop these ideas and decide on which of them to implement. So that's what we're really facing. So, and I think about it like this: that there are sort of two attractors. Attractors are things that are looking like they're going to happen. They're kind of pulling pulling us, or pulling reality towards them, in a sense. Or reality is heading towards them, you could say. So the first being chaos and inability to coordinate, unwise resource exhaustion, pollution, ultimately war and collapse. And the second attractor is an authoritarian government. And it's not that these two would exist, only one or the other. It could even be both. We're looking for a third attractor. So we're looking for an ability for us to do good coordination that emerges from the will of the governed. So not being dictated by a small group of people. Some might wonder, some might ask, would it be okay to have our future dictated by an artificial intelligence if it was benign? And some people are attracted to that. But for me, I really am very attached to the idea where the coordination emerges from the will of the governed. So can AI be the third attractor? In my mind, it really depends on whether that coordination will continue to emerge from the will to govern. So mostly I want to explore how AI can develop and support better better democratic governance systems. But I'm also in this discussion really open to hearing what other people have to say, and any ideas that emerge. So let's start by maybe just checking in. I'd like to hear what brought everybody to this session, and maybe I'll just go through the list based on the order that I see it in, which is starting with Flavia. Are you okay with kind of introducing yourself and telling us what you're interested in here?
Hi there. Yeah, sure. So this is a great question that I think I'm exploring the same topic. I've been working on a project called Centropia DAO, in which I am also kind of I'm not a tech person, so mostly I have ideas, and I try to explore them and research. That's why I'm here because I was totally teased by the title and interested in the topic. And so in my project, I'm also looking into how can we use AI to support coordination and commons governing, and how could we kind of really make it easy for people and communities to organize in local projects and self-organize. And yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. So yeah, I'm totally interested in these questions and what to have to bring to the conversation and discussion.
And you're part of a DAO. Tell me the name of it again.
It's mostly I'm calling it a DAO because that's kind of the intention, but it's mostly me doing the work so far. I call it Syntropia. I can put in the chat here.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so DAO, for those who don't know, distributed autonomous organization. It's just a way that people can coordinate towards common goals without having a defined hierarchy. Kind of using programmatic language to sort of step in and help people avoid the hierarchies that often. That's the way I define it. If you have a different way you'd like to, please do. Okay, so that's great. So we're just going through the list of, I guess we'll go by order of presenting themselves. And so it looks like, Max, maybe you're next. Do you have anything you'd like to mention about what brings you here and what you're interested in?
Oh, well, yeah, sure. I'm from Trusted Seed, just in case, and we work with communities and specifically trying to improve the way they are created and think about stewardship. And we see like tectonic changes, shifts to the AI. We just had also like a bit of a brainstorming yesterday about which features of governance, like in Discord or whatever, can be AI facilitated. So I really hope that out of this Unconference and this session would be a contribution. We would come up to a better understanding what we want collectively build and what are the benefits and limitations. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see who's next. Inesi, I don't know if you want to speak. You're kind of a coordinator, so you're kind of off the hook if you want to be, but you're welcome to jump in if you want to talk about what interests you in this topic.
Hey, well.
And if not, we can. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Yeah, well, I think this technology AI for this specific use is a really interesting topic because can allow us to explore so different angles, so uh, challenge different challenges too. And I'm really interested on hearing from you and specifically from everybody what their thoughts are regarding to this this intersection between the uses of this technology and governance, no, for governance purposes. So yeah, thanks, Sam.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have Luis. Do you want to give us an idea of what brings you here, if you feel.
Hello. Hi, Sam. Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, yeah, first of all, sorry that I came a little bit late, so I'm not sure what was already covered in the meeting. But yeah, basically what brings me here is that, yeah, I'm working for some time in the Web3 space, and I've been, yeah, for some time, like seeing this kind of like new momentum of AI. I've been thinking about like what would be the possible relation, like connection with the Web3. And then I saw the conference and it looks pretty cool. So yeah, I'm interested in exploring a little bit more of it all this. Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I think that's all of us here. It's a small group. So, oh, Mark, I didn't call on you yet. Mark, do you want to give us a sense of what brings you here, what your interest is?
Yeah, well, I just saw it on the calendar and I thought I'll listen in a bit. I'm part of a couple of DAOs, but mainly looking at data and AI in the Web3. So more curious to see what thoughts you have. I think the topic has been discussed also in other forums. So just curious to see which specific take you have, or whether it's just a general intro or update on the topic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for that. And I did mention a little bit in the beginning, and I'll say it again here. I have a few ideas that I will present. I'm building a liquid democracy governance software for groups like DAOs, also for businesses and like legislative bodies like cities and states and hopefully nations in the world at some point. So this topic is very much of interest to me. And so I'll kind of share some of my thinking as I'm planning this software that's in progress. And yeah, but also just really interested in everybody's ideas, concerns, opinions, and that. So with that, I guess I'll just show a few slides here, and we can kind of use these as a stepping point. I'll share kind of one idea at a time, and we can, just pipe in anybody who wants to. Once I sort of explain the slides, I'll just let everybody know. I'll call for input from everybody. Would just love to hear your thoughts or concerns as we go. So as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, looking at these two attractors, one is the chaos, inability to coordinate, resource exhaustion, pollution, war, collapse, just inability to coordinate. And the other one being authoritarian coordination, which has its own problems, potentially long-term problems and short-term problems. And so looking for these attractors are things that are kind of pulling reality towards it, I guess you could say, and looking for a third one. And this is where the coordination, improved coordination, better coordination emerges from the will of the governed. So we're talking about democracy here. So, and could AI be the third attractor? And so for me, this part about that it emerges from the will of the governed is kind of important. So for me, I'm always looking at it in terms of, welcome Ivy. I'm always looking at it in terms of, are we going to be sort of just sheep, or are we going to be part of the coordination process? So sort of by definition, if you look at psychology, look at, the development of children and that kind of thing, they need, children and people need to have autonomy. So I don't think there can be a real governance system that doesn't include our input. And ideally that doesn't emerge from our collective processing. So that's kind of a stipulation for me. I don't feel that I'd like to try to avoid handing it over to a godlike intelligence. I'd like to first have us try figuring it out ourselves, but maybe we can get a little support from artificial intelligence. So what would that support look like? So on our platform, by show of hands, how many people I don't know if we can show hands here. Does everybody here know about liquid democracy? Let's see. Max knows. Okay, Luis, yes. Okay, but a few people know. So basically, the idea is that you can. It's a platform where everybody is a delegate, more or less. You can delegate to anybody else. Everyone can make proposals and vote on them and that kind of thing. And so that's the platform we're building. And so we're looking at using AI to help screen for related proposals and challenges on a platform. And it wouldn't have to be our platform, but any platform that governance is doing governance. So any kind of online democracy, e-democracy, anything like that. So helping users find proposals they're interested in and preventing duplicates. So just using that latent vector space, which I'll talk about in a bit, just to see kind of because language is so tricky, sometimes it can be hard to find in searches. So a little bit more of an advanced search when you start to think about proposals. I think I'll just jump through these and then we can just brainstorm after that. So here's another one that's a little more complicated. So because in industry, doing things sustainably would decrease the competitiveness of a particular business, like no business can be sustainable unless everybody is forced to be sustainable. This is the multipolar trap that Daniel Schwachtenberger talks about so much, the prisoner's dilemma, that kind of thing. So so the industry can't be sustainable. So, and governance can't enforce sustainability in industry, and it won't, because the switch would have to be worldwide. Otherwise, some countries would have advantages. And there's no governance or government that has the authority or trust of everyone to be able to make those kind of legal impositions. I think there'd be so much backlash from industry and from workers, and maybe even from people who are facing higher prices for products. Also, industry has captured government around the world through lobby and other ways. So government is really not interested in kind of even pursuing these kind of questions about how we could enforce sustainability. So the process that we could go down the road, we could use AI to support the process of finding reasonable projections. So finding ways to make sure that industries could survive a switch to sustainability. So it'd be like creating a table of every industry and service and all of its downstream and upstream factors, like talking about car making, you've got a ton of materials that go into it, and then downstream of it, the cost of a car would affect the price of labor and other things downstream. So people going to work and people going to shopping to buy items and stuff. So creating a really complicated table about what would affect what, and using that to find low-hanging fruit. So things that you could regulate that would not disrupt the entire economy, and targeting those and enforcing those. So here's that. So yeah, we could do it, I suppose, but it would be so much easier, I think, if we were able to use artificial intelligence to go through this really complicated set of tables and looking at all commercial commodities and products, looking at the ways these industries would need to change to become sustainable, looking at the cost increase that would result from switching to sustainable practices in each industry, finding low-hanging fruit regarding industries that can handle the increased cost of production, and finding ways to support industry stakeholders through the transition to mitigate the collapse of industries that are vital if they should switch to sustainability. So then somehow we'd have to find government-supported industry support to change the laws internationally. So that's another way that I've identified that we could use AI to support our governance. And the last one I'll mention is using latent semantic vector space. So basically scouring the web for common sentiments in order to create proposals. using AI to basically look for proposals that meet the sentiments of disparate groups. So like left-wing and right-wing people, things that they can both agree on, and actively building coalitions around those specific common sentiments. And that could be in the existing political system. It could actually be used as a third-party tool to support the current legislative process. You know, if a lot of people got on board and they could pressure legislators to use this kind of latent semantic vector space to find coalitions and find things that most people agree on. And it could also be used in, you know, a new governance system like the one we're building. Okay, so I'll be honest, I haven't thought this through entirely about how we're going to get everybody's ideas and inputs, but I think what I'm just going to do is stop presenting and just going to open up the floor here to everybody. If you want to unmute, if you have something you'd like to say, we can kind of take turns chatting. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about AI and how governance can be affected by AI, what types of influence AI can have on governance and that kind of thing. So the floor is open.
Yeah, if I may, I would like just to kind of give a quick recap of our yesterday conversation, which was like in these lines. I could quickly share we can use MyRobot, for example, for capture of the ideas.
Yep.
But this is what we got last time. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So, yeah, again, the topic was more about like AI tool for like quickly growing communities, like 10,000 people in Discord, something like that. But at the end of it, we had a workshop where we discussed the potential like features and distributed them across the different kind of priorities based on the impact and the complexity of implementation. So yeah, we had some must-haves which are like hard to do but might have big impact, like quick wins, what we should focus on. You mentioned, for example, proposals. We also discussed a bit that, but voting system and so on. We discussed there are some spheres where it can be really hard, you know, and maybe not worth it, like high-level governance and norms and values management, and maybe some instrumental things like security checkups or notifications. So all that are kind of interesting use cases for the AI, but also it's curious for me to understand if it's one AI agent, if it's like 10 tools we need to use, how that would be solved.
That's great. So some interesting stuff there. I'm looking forward to kind of looking a little more closely at that list. You know, so many things. Oh, thanks for that. So many of these items are doable without AI. In fact, maybe all of them. And you know, it's interesting. It's like AI is really in the zeitgeist at the moment. It's like we're looking for a solution that's easier than us being sort of like, you know, second grade computers, you know, which we've had to be, I suppose, in a lot of ways as data entry people and, you know, and just workers of various types. And it'd be nice to hand off those kind of things that we're not so good at calculating and looking at huge volumes of data and finding, you know, similarities in giant tables and things. But a lot of those things that you mentioned there, like I'm already building most of those without any AI. So I'll talk about what I'm building a little bit towards the end. Okay, but those are, but all those things could potentially be, you know, improved with artificial intelligence, or many of them. So that's good. Thank you, Max. All right, who's next?
Mark here. So I think that's a great overview, Max, what you shared, and probably each of the boxes could be at least one of the agents. I think, Sam, you spoke specifically to one, the decision support or the proposals, huh? And what I liked is that you could suggest proposals around common sentiments. So that's, I think, a very specific take. Let's say also for conflict resolution, and what I like is because, as you said, a lot of the other topics could also be solved manually in a way, or factually they are. But one that is very hard to solve is actually the conflict resolution, yeah? Or how do you bring um, opposite opinions in a constructive way together? Yeah? And why? Because there's always a human element. Even the facilitator who, try to solve that might be biased or not accepted, and so on. So to have there some more neutral process, that actually helps resolve that, I think that would be really good, because it's an additional value that it can bring. It's not just optimizing a process that exists already. And on the other side, looking at that, any AI agent will also be biased, because it depends on the training data that it was built on, or the method that you put in as rules, or you name it. So any kind of agent there has to be transparent in itself, huh? What type of character it actually has. And yeah, and that Max brings it back. Then at the end, you probably have again multiple agents, even if they all have the same function, yeah? But they are trained on different data, so it's like having different people in the room. Yeah. But I like that very much, this decision support approach. I think it's I don't know if one agent can solve it, but it's certainly the right field to look at.
Um, that's great, Flavia. We'll get to you in one sec. I just want to kind of recap. So one of the couple things that you said there that I really appreciated was sort of using AI as a neutral sort of process for conflict resolution. And there's this thing, Richard Bartlett talks a lot about hosting, people who are good at facilitation and guiding people through a process as a group, and also resolving conflict in a group process. So it's hard to find people who are willing to do those. Not impossible. There are people who are very skilled at this. But I don't know if any of you have really played around with ChatGPT or any of those things. It's becoming clear to me that you know AI could be a pretty good conflict resolution facilitator, and also a facilitator of an agenda, like a process for a group to go through. So that's interesting, and somehow it could be coded to have some transparency where it explains exactly why it's deciding what it's doing. Again, one of those scenarios where people could be trained to do that as well, and probably would get a lot of satisfaction from it. But not everybody wants to do that, and in fact, maybe a very small percentage of the people. Um, and having them be available whenever needed might be a problem, whereas an AI is always available instantly, and if it could have constantly updated state-of-the-art processes, and et cetera, that could be a really useful use as well. Okay, Flavia, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. You're mentioning conflict resolution and ChatGPT, because in a while I was playing with ChatGPT, and I have created a prompt that you can use, and to turn ChatGPT into a nonviolent communication coach for you. So I've created a prompt of a series of questions that are kind of related to nonviolent communication methodology, so it could guide you into some sort of inquiry, and you can kind of talk to that ChatGPT as if it were a coach, and then kind of get you into this mode, and kind of coach you into analyzing the conflict, so it could actually help you. So what you were just saying about AI into conflict resolution, I was playing with. I can share the prompt.
Yeah, that'd be
And
great. That'd be great.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's I taught in BC for some time. I taught it at the Peace Corps, and I taught it at a local school district where I lived in New York and a few other places, and with a partner. And it is to some degree kind of rote. Like there's a real sort of simple process that artificial intelligence, like large language models in specific, could really easily. So I'm really excited to hear that you're already playing with that, and I'm going to play with that myself a bit. Um, I don't know how that, if you could bring sort of Chat GPT onto a call that's coming soon, probably, where it can kind of monitor, turn what people are saying into text and monitor it and chime in, even have the text that the Chat GPT produces vocalized somehow. But all that's coming down the pipe super fast. So you could probably have like a chat nonviolent communication monitor in your whatever discussion groups that you're in. Or even on text forums where it could identify. It's another good one, really important one I haven't mentioned, is using it as and there are already companies doing this to identify trolling behavior and antisocial behavior online. But can you imagine then if the the chat bot could then engage with the troll and say, well, it sounds like you're, I've noticed that you've been, using some angry words, towards some of the members. It sounds like you're really upset about, gender or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Does that sound right to you? And what would you like? What would you need? What would make you feel more comfortable, or whatever. So so that's great. Yeah, I'm curious to kind of see what becomes of that. I can see that that's probably on its way. Okay, so all right, thank you, Flavia. Okay, got a few stragglers coming in. So welcome, Arun. We've just been sort of, and Simon actually, looks like we've been, I kind of gave a little presentation earlier, and we've been just brainstorming on how we see artificial intelligence as being able to support governance, coordination, decision making, and even how we coordinate not only in large scale governance, but kind of also in smaller groups. And so I'd love to hear from you guys if you have any thoughts about that. We're kind of at the stage where we're all just chiming in about how we feel about artificial intelligence and governance. So Simon, any thoughts on that?
No, actually not much, but on my hand, I'm thinking about, the Kleros system, which is an optimist oracle, which enables to, to decide, to deal with disputes, and not just about governance issues, but a conflicting issue. It's like having some human-based court which can settle disputes. And I'm thinking here again as an AI tool to be able to assist, in fact, in the analysis, to be like a third voice that is able to provide a fact-based kind of analysis about the dispute, but more acting as an advisor, let's say. But that's just one point of view that I'm having in this review.
So let me see if I understood what you said. That there in the government where you live, there are organizations that do this, but it would be interesting to have an online automated version. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm more of, I'm not thinking about like here at the Kleros. I don't know if you know, this is a very interesting initiative, Kleros. I just posted the name.
Oh, Kleros, yeah.
And I'm more thinking about if we could extend such a solution with some AI tools, additional tools again to help in processing and yes, and having some analysis tools around it. But I'm not sure if how this can be applied. I'm not good enough and not knowledgeable in the AI field in order to know how heavy that will be to enable such analysis based on contract and on some context coming from social networks, this kind of stuff. How you will be able to to aggregate all this and yes to be able to provide any settlement.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's it's some people have said, look, we're already at the stage where AI is sort of taking the jobs of artists and also a lot of human resources and even business strategy workers. Now there are AI agents or machine learning agents or digital agents that are outsourcing many of these jobs. So it's only a matter of time before doctors are coming. I'm a doctor, and I know that very soon the algorithm will be implemented in especially with health maintenance organizations in the United States, where they'll save a lot of money. But also things like conflict resolution, and there could be some real benefits here. It could be so inexpensive to see a doctor. Likewise, it could be super easy. You're having a fight with your wife or whatever, and you just click a button and you just start talking, and the thing identifies kind of the problems and the failures of communication, or likewise with an organization or a business where it could fact check points and kind of speed up the process of ideation and moving to action. So yeah, I think these are really coming down the line.
Yeah, but still, the issue is about feeding, having some learning model, and having some maintenance, right? So defining the scope, defining the right, the input, like for what Javier just mentioned. I mean, all these patterns have to be fed and maintained also because they will be evolving. So I guess it is powerful, the solution itself, once set up and running and saving money definitely, but still I think there is some maintenance cost which is not negligible here.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be honest, the cost of software is marginal relative to compared especially to the human agents. And eventually, I think it'll come down to the point of like, what can human beings do that brings them satisfaction, that engages and helps us grow? What kind of work, can we keep for ourselves? Human beings, we're pack animals. We need to carry some burden. We need to have some kind of responsibility and an opportunity to grow and learn. And so, what of the tasks that we could outsource, because eventually they will all be able to be outsourced if we continue on this path. But perhaps we should maintain some kind of scope of work that helps us develop as human beings, that keeps us, from being just cattle. So, yeah. Okay. Arun, so anything else you want to mention, Simon, before we switch?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Great.
I'll be listening.
Thank you. Arun, I'd love to hear any thoughts you have about artificial intelligence and governance.
Well, I think could be some, tools as simple as, removing spam proposals, how you capture contribution, things like that, soft skill contribution, how AI could be used. Like, for example, Praise has come up with some, tool where they are summarizing what, how one person has received praise, and based on the quantification, they've made a summary sort of. So something that sort of things would be, if you're able to capture contribution, which
what do you mean by capture contribution?
What I mean is mostly soft skill based contributions. You have a lot of stuff where you can capture this contribution based on badges and stuff. That's all on chain. But then if there is, say, a way you're doing general stuff like attending meeting on a regular basis, things which are boring, but you do it on a regular basis. If in some way AI is able to, capture that, that'll be interesting. Is what I thought.
So like group meetings where you have like weekly meetings, for example, or monthly meetings with a group, a software development team, for example, and sort of capturing the content and summarizing it.
Yeah, it could be one. I think one thing I don't know if teams are already using it. There are people who keep writing. There's one, there are people keep taking notes and summarizing this thing. Maybe you want to put it into a newsletter. So what if you can use AI to do all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Those are those kind of like jobs that we're second-rate computers, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. And as the computers kind of develop the ability to work with language and they'll be able to, without complaint and without delay, immediately do those types of secretarial jobs. No doubt about it.
And one more thing I could think of is, I think a lot of people don't have context on certain proposals, like so everybody don't have context with all sort of things. So if sorry, AI can be used to summarize these proposals in, like, I don't have enough expertise in a particular field, so but then a proposal comes up in that and I hold token, then if AI helps me in making understand that proposal in a much better way, like explain it to like a 5-year-old sort of stuff, and if it can improve, I think quality decision making is one thing that's lacking in this space, because everybody don't have context with everything. So if AI can help with that as well, I think that'll be a good.
Got it. Creating context, explaining more simply. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are all useful things. Okay. And let's see. Ivy, have you had a chance to speak?
Oh no, not yet. But I came in late, but I saw the ideas that you presented, like how we can use AI in governance. I love the idea of creating proposals to meet those common sentiments, because I've been applying for grants, in different communities, and one of the things that I would love to look at is like what are the problems that the DAO has, so we can provide a solution, because if we propose something that they don't need, then it doesn't make sense to submit a proposal. So I'm curious if there's like already tools that can do this task, like so it's easier for us to create proposals and understand the problems in the DAOs.
Right. So I'm going to be completely honest. I think there's a lot of potential here for AI to, improve our workflows and, make governance better. But I feel like we haven't really solved the big problem, which is how do we coordinate, like as human beings, not to hand it over to AI, but to really come up with systems that allow us to coordinate as human beings. So, oops, let's see what this link is. Oh, okay, I see. So, and so I think of like human intelligence or natural intelligence instead of artificial intelligence networked properly in a coordination system to be like, that should be our first attempt. And like you're saying, Ivy, like no real good tools exist for creating proposals and helping people understand the proposals and prioritizing them and creating alternate proposals and developing them and all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what I'm building with Forby.io, and hopefully it'll be of use to DAOs and other groups. And I'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to talk. and to brainstorm. And I want to hear, any other ideas that people have been rattling around or concerns regarding AI and governance. So just opening up the floor. Hop in, anybody who wants to chat at all, has anything to say. Luis, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just a quick thing from my side. One aspect of AI that I've been quite interested in the in connection with governance is how AI could possibly be used to trigger governance mechanisms. So, for example, how could it keep track of some, let's say, state changes, and then basically trigger a governance mechanism like a vote or a referendum or something similar once there is a certain state change. So,
give me an example of a state change that would trigger a governance protocol.
Yeah, sure. So, for example, let's say, let's take the example of a government. Like how AI could be used. And I actually don't think AI would be completely necessary here. Like there could be some other mechanisms. But for instance, how could we do something like saying that a constitution needs to be reapproved reapproved by the population once let's say actually let me take a step back. I'll try to explain it a little bit better. So how could AI, for example, keep track of the current population and see if after a certain time, after, for instance, a constitution has been passed, if after a certain time, the majority of the population now, let's say 20, 30 years after the last constitution was passed and through a referendum and so on, uh, how could like AI keep track and know when, for example, a majority of the population is younger than the constitution, and that would be the time when the constitution would be re-voted on by the people. Just an example, or another example would be you have like again like on governments different legislatures, right? So you have elections, and then there is this kind of switch of delegates of representatives that are there. How could, for instance, AI show, for example, what pieces of law or any kind of decision could be changed once the proportion of a parliament changes, for instance? So you can clearly see like what are the new possibilities that are opening up with these kind of state changes. So now there is a new legislature with a new composition of like politicians. So now they would be inclined to review these and these like laws, for instance. And there are just some thoughts that I think would be interesting to explore.
Interesting. So, like this idea of when the majority of the population is older than the Constitution, considering like revisiting the Constitution. I'd never heard that before. And then projecting what kind of changes would happen if new legislation would be elected, new legislators would be elected, like if there was a new majority. So those are interesting things.
These are predictive AI, right? I'm not sure how you will name it, but I guess it will be very difficult based on, I don't know, politician calls and talks to build any prediction out of it. And I mean, against laws and this kind of stuff, but interesting, yeah.
Yeah. I think also I can imagine an LLM kind of like, tracking the rhetoric of a group of politicians or the language, the vector space of a particular party, and looking at what bills they would likely put into place and that kind of thing. It's probably not too far off at this point. Interesting though.
Maybe the limit of the AI, right? I mean, the projecting and having such political, I don't know, I'm not sure, such engagement. I mean, I think you will need the candidate, or I don't know, each profiles to be much more specific about what they will bring in and what changes can be expected, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and again, one of those situations where the party themselves could tell you, like, I wouldn't need an AI to predict too much, but unless I'm thinking about it wrongly. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Open space, open floor. Any other thoughts? If not, I'll just go ahead and start to close up here. And I'll talk a little about what I'm building. It's a little bit of blatant promotion, but also, my concern with our inability to coordinate is really big. Like, I really feel a lot of urgency and fear around the meta crisis. And so it's really forced me to dive into the space of governance over the last few years. And this is the second version of the software that I'm building. We're not accepting any beta testers at the moment. We're kind of rebuilding it entirely from scratch. But I'll explain what it is a little bit, and you can kind of see how some of the AI support, governance support systems that I've proposed could fit into that. And feel free to chime in if you have any questions. So basically, I think almost everybody knows we're talking about liquid democracy. Any member can be a representative. Members can delegate to those with expertise. And so that concentrates expertise onto topics. So if you think about your DAO or even your city council or your business, and having a list of tags, governance tags, like things to do with economics or the environment or human rights or whatever in governance, or if it's a local business talking about marketing or procurement or human resources or whatever, those are all sort of areas of expertise, and you can delegate to any member of the group any proposal that is tagged with those areas of expertise. So that's a way of reducing the cognitive load, so you don't have to look at every single proposal. But you can, of course, look at every single proposal if it's a small enough group. So again, Liquid is just being able to delegate to any other member on some topics, and managing some yourself or delegating to different people for different topics. So actually, none of this is that relevant. I'll just talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing rather than present this. And I'll just open the floor to questions as we go. So the idea here is that anybody can propose. So we have 3 levels of proposals. One is an opinion poll. So it's very simple, and so you just ask a question, people can drop in opinions or options, and those get upregulated, upvoted or downvoted. At kind of like Reddit or Quora, and these all have text limits, sort of like Twitter. So then you can use the community. You can kind of get a sense of how a community feels about a subject. The next level is called a vote, and it's a little bit more detailed. And instead of upvoting or downvoting, we're using a really interesting voting mechanism that incorporates approval voting and ranked choice and score voting. So there could be a threshold. It has to get a certain amount of approval, and then once it passes that, it's ranked according to a ranked choice algorithm. So anybody can put an item up as a vote, and anybody can put in options for the vote. So, and the third thing is called a proposal. Oh, with the vote, there's also a sense-making tool, which is the ability to say why you voted for or against any given proposal. So you can start to see how people feel about each proposal, and that allows you to, or each option, and that allows people to come up with better options. Also, there's a chat, like a kind of a Twitter or Facebook-like chat associated with each poll and associated with each vote. and within the vote associated with each option. So people can discuss each option on its own without having a jumbled sort of discussion board. It's kind of an interesting subject we've had a challenge we've had to face about how many chat areas are too many and how many are too few. So that's kind of what we've come up with. And then the third is called a proposal, and excuse me, a challenge. So a challenge is a request for proposals, and proposals are like options that people can vote on. But within them are what we call these sub-agreements. So we call this the granular proposal system. So you might say, how are we going to raise money for our DAO, something like that. People could propose, oh, we should sell NFTs, we should, we should provide services, etc. These might be different proposals. But then within each proposal, you can have sub-agreements like what services should we offer, and those can be prioritized, voted on. When should we start offering? How much should we charge? And all these things can be put in as separate votes within the proposal, so you can start to make decisions, more granular decisions, and have more agreement. Right now, often proposals are just big blocks of text. They start with the TLDR, and so and it's similar, in our governance where these 1,000-page legislative documents, and nobody has any, very little input. I mean, the legislators can block them, but what would be better if they don't like the text, and they can request changes. But what would be better is if there could be a voting process on all of the who's and what's and when's, where's, why's and how's, how much, all that stuff. And so that's the proposal system that we're creating, allowing us to sort of crowdsource the finer details of proposals. And because in large organizations there may be too many proposals, like in governance, there may be too many proposals. Thanks, Max, and thank you for having me here. But there may be too many proposals, so we're using the liquid democracy system to sort of reduce the cognitive load. So does that make sense? That's just a quick overview of what we're doing. I'd love to get any questions or feedback on that, and if not, we can finish.
That's really interesting. I'd like to know. Yes, your tool is in production. What is your model? I mean, anybody can use it, or how does it work?
Yeah. So it's the first version is still up, but we're not getting any users on it, new users. It's we're building the second one. It will be a few months. We have a totally upgraded system, totally upgraded UI, and basically the system will be free to use for most people. So you'll be automatically invited to a number of groups, like the world, your country, your city, your state, bioregion, and watershed. And you can start or join one additional private group. So you can invite as many members as you want. All of them can join for free. If you want to if you want to join a second group or create a second group, then you might pay something like €10, $10 a month, something. Depending on your country. It'll be less for third world countries probably, and more for first world countries. So, but something along the lines. Thanks, Ivy. Yeah, looking forward to being able to show it. And yeah, so the people, it'll be if you want to join a second or start a second group, you'll pay a small amount, $10 a month or something.
All right, good, thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to ask or talk about?
So here, sorry, but so there is a AI side and there is some blockchain related stuff, or?
Yeah, so the AI side, we're kind of just looking at three different options that we talked about at the beginning. One is to look for just basically a glorified duplicate dedupe or duplicate checker. When people start to type in what they're interested in, it looks for proposals in the latent semantic vector space. So it finds proposals. Maybe they don't have the same words, but are
guiding the okay.
Yeah. But also some system that will automatically propose things for that region. So if it's the world or if it's your city, looking at scouring the web for sentiment among people and automatically proposing or setting up proposals that people can initiate that have the support of disparate groups. Like, you'll find that there's often common ground between strange groups that wouldn't normally communicate. So looking for, especially for those, looking for things that, left-wingers and right-wingers would agree on, and creating proposals that incorporates the semantic vector space of both of those groups. Right. So that would be another tool that we're looking for. There was a third one we mentioned, which has to do with managing industry, finding sustainable ways to manage industry.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, I guess unless anybody has anything else to say, any last words? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. There'll be a recording available. And let me know. You can reach out to me directly if you have any questions. sam@4b.io. I think it might, in SE we'll be able to give you that. It'll be on the syllabus and other places. So reach out to me if you have any thoughts or questions directly, and look forward to hearing from you. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks. Bye.